You can't shoot what you can't see. This episode covers how two units can have a valid line of sight to each other. The first thing that can break line of sight that I'm going to talk about is space between two mechs. If the mechs get too far away from each other, they can't see each other anymore. But you need a lot of space to break line of sight. 42 inches actually, which is, let's see, this much. Are we even in there? Yeah, 42. That's quite a bit of space. I've never been in a game where line of sight was broken from distance between the two units. Another thing is water of depth 2 or greater. Assuming this is a depth 2 or greater water area, these two units do not have line of sight to each other because this mech is under the water. The surface of the water is over the mech, and you can't see through the water. And bullets won't go through the surface of the water and do damage. Oh, but now, of course, if both the units were under the water in the same water area, then they would have line of sight to each other. Another thing that can break line of sight is woods. But now it depends on how much woods are in the way. These two units still have line of sight to each other because we need at least 6 inches of woods in between the units to break line of sight. And right now that's not enough woods. But if we were in this situation, these two units do not have line of sight to each other because there's about 9 inches of woods in between them, and that would break line of sight. At least that's how things used to work in this version of the game. There's been a little change with the very latest version of the game. Let's compare the two now. If I can get them all in here. Yeah, I think I can. So basically, you'll notice, sorry about the glare here. There's a paragraph right here that is not over here. This is not the most recent printing. This is the most recent printing. We have a new paragraph on page 40. And this paragraph says that if a unit is occupying woods, the first 2 inches surrounding that mech also count as occupied woods. It used to be that just the woods the base is touching is the occupied woods, but now it's the 2 inches away from the base in a circle that's occupied. And that occupied area of woods does not count against the line of sight. Accordingly, if we find ourselves in a situation where the two units are, let's say, right now the two units are about a little over 7 inches apart, but we can't count the first 2 inches from the Thunderbolt, and we can't count the first 2 inches from the Battle Master. So only these 3 inches count against the line of sight. And those 3 inches are not equal to or greater than 6 inches. So these two mechs now have line of sight to each other. Of course, if we were in this situation, then line of sight is broken because there's way more, there's no occupying woods terrain because neither mech is in the woods occupying it. If we're in this situation, we first have to measure out 2 inches, put a finger there, and then measure from there. And we see from there we have, almost 9 inches of woods going there, so that would block line of sight. But If, say, yeah, the thunderbolt is exactly 6 inches away, line of sight is not broken because we have to start measuring from 2 inches away. So there's only 4 inches of woods intervening. So there is line of sight now. And to reiterate, no, this mech is not occupying these first 2 inches of woods because this mech isn't in those woods. Hills can also block line of sight if they intervene between 2 units. So right now, these 2 units cannot see each other because there's a hill in the way. Units aren't high enough to see over the hill. If, however, the hill were a bit shorter, now the 2 units can see each other. But the thunderbolt will have partial cover. We can figure out if the unit has partial cover by putting a string on top of the attacking mech and moving that down. And when the string bends, everything where the string is bent is behind the cover. So we see that, well, with this mech, roughly about 2/3 of it is visible. Therefore, there's partial cover. Now, I like to say if about half the mech is visible and no more, then the mech has partial cover. But the exact wording from the book is, if more than 1/3, but less than 2/3 of a mech target is hidden behind blocking terrain, line of sight is not considered blocked. Instead, the mech is said to have partial cover. But for me, when I play, about half is roughly equal enough to more than 2/3, but less than 1/3.